welcome to the Pig and Whistle Tales from Azeroth. As always, here at the Pig and Whistle Inn in Stormwind, I go for a variety of subjects with regards to World of Warcraft. So grab a bottle or a pint, sit back and enjoy. This episode we'll be going over, well, it's something that we kind of covered before, but essentially what I've had in this past week is kind of a break from WoW, and this is made up of many different things, mainly due to not being able to do arenas as I want to do arenas. There's no raiding for the guild currently, as we have a lot of people on holiday, as it is around that time of year. So many different factors went into my kind of small break of WoW. That includes other games coming out like Diablo and stuff, which are really fun to play. And I'm just going to be going over kind of why it was actually good, like how it helped, why did it happen in the first place, that kind of thing. And why it's probably a healthy thing in general to just have these sort of breaks from any type of game, let alone World of Warcraft, because many different reasons, obviously. But let's get straight into the weekly news. I'm going to do something a little bit different with the weekly news. It's going to be the 4 first subjects. So the world bosses, the bonus event, the brawl. You have the mythic affixes, and then you have the last part. What I've been previously doing is going through the Legion artifacts and what they gave you, essentially. So like more damage on your maul or your moonfire, etc. But instead, I'm going to try and go over some of the lore of a specific artifact. And I'm going to use Wowpedia for this, as it is quite a decent website and where I get a lot of the info off of from old and like WoW sources and stuff. But essentially, I'm going to be going over kind of what they did or what they were in World of Warcraft, in Warcraft itself, like when they were created and stuff like that. It's not going to be for like pages and pages long. It's just going to be kind of short segments and kind of an idea of like what made it an artifact and why it's so essential to the game, essentially. But yeah, you'll see what I mean in a second. So we have the world bosses for this week. Basil. It's never Basil. Basil. I've completely forgotten how to say this guy's name every single time. Basil. I'm going to go with Basil. And the Zakali Elders. One can be located in Azure Span on the right-hand side. And the Zakali Elders are located still in Zaralak Caverns on the left-hand side of the map. Mr. Pandaria Time Walking is your bonus event for this week. You can buy certain mounts, pets, reputations within this expansion. So if you want to, you can purchase these things, or you can save up for the next Time Walking event. Pump Stomp is your brawl for this week. This one's very simple. They put you in an Arathi Basin against 15 AI bots, and essentially you just go in and win the game. That's why it is a stomp, essentially, because it is just for gearing characters via honor and stuff like that. Which, by the way, a side note on this, I do want to say this was a lifesaver when it came up in Shadowlands, because to farm honor in Shadowlands was a pain in the arse, because you obviously had a different PvP system, gearing system in Shadowlands, where you kind of needed to get the honor gear and then you went up to the conquest gear. Whereas in this, you can get your honor gear and you're basically already up to scratch, or somewhat up to scratch with those in conquest gear, because the conquest gear obviously had 9 ranks to it. So it was absolutely crazy when this came around. This is when I would gear all of my characters for PvP, essentially, and I just wouldn't stop. The mythic affixes for this week are Storming, Bursting, and Fortified. Storming, there's some small little cyclones rolling around. You just want to move out of the way of them. Bursting, a mob will die, it will burst, and it will give you a debuff. Don't let this debuff stack too high. Help your healer out by healing yourself, popping a defensive if it does. But essentially you want to kill everything very quickly at the same time, and then a priest master spells it or anything like that. Or you just want to stop at, say, 5-6 stacks, let it drop off, and then finish the rest of the mob pack that you're killing. Fortified, the non-boss enemies have more damage and healing, and the minions that they summon do also. So make sure you bring a talent build for this specific affix. So the artifact that I want to go over, the lore-wise of it anyway, is called Gahanir. And what Gahanir is essentially is a giant tree that was made within the Emerald Dream. So it was created at the dawn of Azeroth, essentially, and Freya, one of the Titan Keepers? No, it's not a Titan Keeper. One of the Pantheon, essentially, created the Emerald Dream, and this was the first thing she kind of put into it. She just sprouted a giant tree that was in there, and it was kind of meant to be the source of like healing and balance and that kind of thing. And what essentially did was whenever, or this tree grew so big that it started to actually like become a staple point within Azeroth. It managed to bloom into Azeroth a tiny bit. Like it wasn't physically manifested on the world itself, but essentially you could always feel a presence of the healing and stuff like that. And what it did was it called to like nature animals, you know, all of the like druids as well, anything that is like a demigod, Aviana, you have Cenarius, anything like that got called to it, and into the dream, it kind of beckoned them all, and especially for winged creatures. And the wild god Aviana was one that took a particular interest in it and eventually became bonded with it. That's kind of the main reason for it, and that is why it's kind of like more of a winged creature type of haven almost. Since Aviana grew like and kind of attached to it, she kind of put her power into the tree itself, and this kind of had consequences because obviously when she died, the tree would. So during like the War of the Ancients and stuff, back 10,000 years, something like that, Aviana was killed by the Burning Legion, and essentially what this means was that all of the leaves on Gahanir fell from the branches and stuff like that. It basically died, essentially, and like along with Aviana, and a single branch from the tree, or from the mother tree, as it was known, was gifted to the green dragonfly. And it was a single acorn. And essentially what they did with this was they gave it to the red dragonfly, and they grew what is now known as Nordrassil. Nordrassil being the giant tree that resides in Mount Hyjal. And this is the tree that Archimonde in the War of the Ancients attacked. Was it in the War of the Ancients they attacked that? I'm not too sure it was. I feel like it wasn't. I feel like it was the another war that he attacked it, like Third War or something like that, or the Sundering, you know, around that time. But essentially, the like acorn from Gahanir, the mother tree, was planted and grew into Nordrassil, this world tree, this giant tree, kind of like Teldrassil. Not as big. Teldrassil itself was massive. It was huge. It was absolutely insane. Like, I didn't know that Teldrassil, the Night Elf starting zone, was a tree. I didn't know that until like many years after starting the game, and I really looked at it and was like, oh yeah, that is just a giant like bloody tree, essentially. But yeah, essentially it grew Nordrassil, and what this did was that basically they had they took a branch, or moved it. Yeah, give me a sec, quietly. Yeah. So essentially, all of this, like, as it was growing, it grew a branch, or there was a branch that was stored from Gahanir and in the Emerald Dream. And essentially what that did was they brought it to Azeroth, and this is kind of what made the artifact weapon for the players, as we know it in Legion. And it was used firstly, though, to bring back Aviana, who was the god, the wild god. And that was used in order to defend Mount Hyjal from like Ragnaros and such. But after that, it was passed down to the players. And essentially, they used it for well, most recently to draw the Sargeras weapon that is now in Silithus, like it draw its power essentially, and it has since rendered Gahanir kind of, or that very small branch of it, powerless, because it took that's kind of all the all the stuff that he did at the end of the Legion, because everyone was like, oh, why can't we just use these amazing artifact weapons to go into the next expansion? And it's like, okay, we need something to diminish the power of them, and a giant sword like stabbed into the world, that'll do it. You draw the power out of that, and you can deem your smaller weapons inactive in a sense. So that's kind of where it sits now. It's not necessarily the most fluent lore, I would say, from my part. There's definitely ways that I can like go through it. I can just read blocks of text if you want, but I kind of like the idea of skimming through it and not giving you guys a block of text that I'm just reading. Ideally, this is also obviously to manage a bit of time, because if I'm just sat there reading 10 paragraphs, it's kind of like, oh, okay, this is kind of crazy. But yeah, I'll do that for like smaller ones. But if I have something like the Scythe of Elune, there's so much lore in it that it's absolutely crazy, and I won't have time to do all of that. That's like an episode by itself. But yeah, I hope you kind of got the gist of it. I did mess up a couple things. It will only get better going through the weeks and stuff, doing this more and more, and I'll become a lot more fluent in it. But yeah, that's essentially what the artifact weapon for Gahanir is. It is a branch from the very first kind of world tree in the Emerald Dream, and it is a source for balance and like healing, essentially, which, I mean, it was a restoration druid artifact weapon, so it is very much in touch with the restoration kind of side of it, like the healing and all of that. But let's get straight on to the main source of the episode. I have recently had a small break from World of Warcraft. There's probably about a week and a half, 2 weeks, anything like that. The main reason for this, or not like a major break, like I'll still log on and I'll do like a heroic plus dungeon or something just to gear my ults, something like that. But essentially, for the most part, I have been chilling, like doing other things. Now, the main reasons why I've taken this small break, firstly, there's no reason for me to log on at the moment. People have taken holidays. That's both in classic and retail. People that I play with arenas on retail have gone away, and obviously I can do arenas in Looking for Group, but I don't find it as enjoyable. I very much like the communication aspect. I just enjoy playing via communications a lot more in general. I don't find it as fun just doing Looking for Group, because you always feel like you have to prove something, and it's a lot more stressful, and that's not how I perform like in arenas. I don't perform under pressure. When I'm a lot more chilled in arenas, I tend to perform a lot better. And then if you look at the classic side of things, we have about several people on holiday right now. Several people on holiday or having IRL stuff. I know a couple people have like exams and stuff that they're taking. So essentially what we decided as a guild was to do a guild break. And what that kind of entailed was we just take a few weeks of raiding like out of the equation. So that started, I think, around the 28th of what month are we? June. So 28th of May, I think that started, and we're going to be resuming on the 18th, so a couple days after this episode goes live. And the whole purpose of this was, firstly, we've been raiding since probably Wrath started, 3 or 4 weeks after Wrath started. We haven't really had a break or anything like that. Secondly, it's it's not as fun to hug any sort of like players in Wrath Classic, in my opinion. That's kind of what kills World of Warcraft for me, the pugging aspect, or a guild that is very dysfunctional is what kind of gets me that's why we kind of stick to the 10-man format of raiding. We find it a lot more enjoyable. It's a lot more tight-knit, very family-like, and we just enjoy it a lot more. Everyone can have fun and have a chilled time and still perform really well in the raids at the same time. Whereas if you're looking at 25-man or 40-man, you're looking at many more people who can mess up, and you're looking at people getting really angry, loads of people talking over people in comms, and you're looking at potentially just one person going, everyone shut up, listen to me, I'm the raid leader. It's not as enjoyable. So we kind of decided as a kind of group of officers to take the small break for the guild. And it's nice to just not get burnt out, essentially, because Alderwar will be there, the raid will be there for a while, and it's not going anywhere, let's face it, it's not going anywhere anytime soon. So these all had very small factors, or many factors, in terms of me not needing to go on the game as much. And I thought it was probably best just to take a little bit step back and chill for a bit. This is obviously due to other games being released. More importantly, or most recently, I should say, Diablo 4. Diablo is a game that I've always actually really had interest in. And Diablo 3 I loved. So Diablo 4 coming out, I've known about it for a few years since the trailer, and I've always wanted to play it. And I played the beta and the open beta and all of that. I got early access to the betas, all of that stuff. And essentially, I really enjoyed it, and I wanted to give that a real good go, which I have been doing these past couple weeks during my sort of WoW break. And it's kind of nice because I can get my dose of Diablo in, and then I can return to WoW, do my arenas and stuff, and have Diablo as a side game, like a sprinkle of Diablo almost, kind of like a sprinkles on a donut, essentially. So it actually has worked out really well, and we didn't even plan on that in the guild break that people would be playing Diablo. Because when a new game comes out, one that is very big, people tend to hyper-focus on it and hyper-fixate on it. And having to stop playing that game to go and raid for a few hours can either do one of two things: give you a respite from the game, in which case you're oh yeah, I feel like playing Diablo again, and going back on it and playing immediately. Or it can be, oh my god, I can't believe I signed up for this raid. You know what? If they don't need me, so I'll just sign as absent. And then you've got people signing as absent with 30 minutes before raid, and it's kind of oh, okay, we got to find subs. It's that, or it's oh my god, I really don't want to raid, but I'll go there and give my bare minimum, potentially, very much potentially. I don't think it would be in the guild, but I think in other guilds it probably would have been. But yeah, essentially, the timing of it was really good because it allowed me to play Diablo, it allowed loads of guildies to play, and it's just something else to talk about in the Discord. Now, I think it was actually really good for me to take a small break purely on the basis that I have been raid leading in Classic for them several months. So it is very much, I'm constantly raid leading, I'm constantly dealing with stuff on the Discord. We also have stuff retail, you have to keep up with gearing. You constantly looking at doing arenas to constantly practice, to keep up to date. You really try and push the rating when you can, even though the rating is very much diminished at the moment. It's not the best, I'm not going to lie. But essentially, yeah, you're looking to keep up. You don't want to lose a step. You want to keep fresh for potential end-of-season pushes, mid-season pushes, whatever you want. So it's good to step away and actually regain your love for the game. It's okay, I've taken a couple weeks off. I'm very much refreshed. I want to get back in the arenas. I want to start beating people up in arenas. I want to play my Boomy again. I want to play my Warrior, Rogue, whatever you play. And essentially you jump back in and it feels like a brand new game again. Because what I would give to go back to making my very first Night Elf character and running to the second town of Dolinar and seeing a giant walking tree that I thought was going to kill me. So I literally walked around it. What I'd give to have that sort of experience again, and these small breaks kind of give you that sense sometimes. They can definitely help, is what I'm saying. Because you will burn out of the game. It's very rough, and it's very unlikely that no one would ever burn out of the game if you played it for so often, essentially. So it's always good to have these breaks in between. It's, like I said, it's helped very much in terms of me wanting to play the game again. It's rekindled that love almost for the game and what it means. Something else that can do that, though, you don't have to stop entirely. You can obviously still play like every now and again. But what other things can do that is by learning something completely new about the game. So if you've done PvE, PvP, battle pets, everything in-game, what you can do is learn about the lore of the game. So who is Arthas? So Arthas was a fallen prince of Lordaeron who essentially went to check out what the plague was in the lands of Lordaeron, so like the Plaguelands, as we now know, but it was more like Lightside Chapel, there was Stratholme, these were cities and towns and stuff like that. He went to check out what the plague was, and it led him to Stratholme, where he purged the city of all of the civilians because they were infected, and he came across a Dreadlord. This Dreadlord was called Mal'Ganis, which led him to Northrend, which led him to pick up a sword that was cursed, which, yeah, like, there's a lot of lore in WoW, and what you can kind of do is go to that side of it, and that can rekindle your love. That can rekindle your love to go and level in Northrend, like for Wrath of the Lich King Classic. If you wanted to level in, or if you're making a retail character and you think, okay, I might make a Draenei. Let's say Draenei. And you're like, oh, what's the Draenei's lore? Because you get a small snippet of it, like at the start on the character select screen, you do. And it's a very small chunk compared to like their lore entirely. So what the Draenei are is essentially their name means exile. They are originally called Eredar, and they are from, oh my god, I've completely forgotten the planet, Argus. They are from the planet of Argus, and they had 3 leaders, Kil'jaeden, Archimonde, and Velen. Velen is their current leader, whereas Kil'jaeden and Archimonde are generals of the Burning Legion who we have killed in-game. Like, canonically? Is that the word for it? Yes, it is. So there's so much lore behind it, and that can spark you to make your Draenei and to, like, get you to understand the questing area and what's actually happened. The Exodar, you think it's a really cool rock inside of a mountain. It's a spaceship. The Exodar, the Draenei, like, capital is a fucking spaceship. I bet you didn't know that. No one did until Legion. Who knew? Like, it's absolutely insane. But if you read the quests, it would have said in there that, like, that they essentially crash landed on Azeroth. And that's what a lot of people don't do. They don't read the quests. And these quests actually are very important. That can rekindle your love for the game. It doesn't need to be a break, essentially. It's something that you have to find an angle almost to get your love for the game back, because there's many different ways to it. Lore, I think, is one of the best ones that you can do, because there is so much of it. It's so rich, and it spans several, like, expansions. Even before World of Warcraft was born, there's Warcraft 3, Warcraft 2, Warcraft 1 that all start with the, like, lore in it, essentially. And a lot of the lore before World of Warcraft actually comes from these Warcraft games. So Warcraft 1, 2, and 3, because that's where a lot of the Arthas lore comes from. Like, you play through as Arthas and you meet Anubarak. No one knows who Anubarak is to the Lich King, but essentially he saved Arthas and led him to the Frozen Throne. And this is why he is a traitor to the Nerubians in Northrend and stuff. Like, not many people know about the lore in-game, and it's so cool to see. This one went a bit off track, I'm not going to lie. I'm not sure how I got to this point. But essentially, there is reasons to take a break in WoW, and this is kind of why I took a break in WoW. I'm seeing a lot of stuff on the PTR as well, like for 10.1.5, which is really cool because I want to see the new, Evoker spec, augmentation. I want to see all of the buffs and changes and talent tree, like, changes and stuff like that. It's really cool to see, and the thing is, when you're constantly looking at this stuff day in, day out, you think, oh my God, it's taking forever for this patch to come out. But I've taken 2 weeks off, played loads of Diablo, and suddenly I'm 2 weeks closer to a new patch. And it's like, oh, that's really cool. That's like really, really cool. And yeah, it just gives you a completely different perspective, taking a small break. But that is it for this episode. This is a bit of a weird one, but I thought I'd just share with you, like, why I was taking a break, or you guys didn't even know, essentially, because I still have like loads of stuff to do on WoW. I could go through lore stuff and all of that, but why it's essentially good to take a break and all of that, and how it does help, like, you find love for the game again, essentially. But yeah, that's all for this week. Thank you all very much for listening. Do check out the socials at Twitch and YouTube. Constant stuff happening over there, as well as TikTok. There's a link down below for that. I post loads of like arena clips on there. It's definitely worth watching. I enjoy it, so I hope that you guys do as well. But thank you all very much for listening, and go a valor, friend. Goodbye all.